I've always had an unhealthy relationship with food. When I was a kid, I was actually pretty skinny, but that was so long ago that I don't even remember that. What I do remember, though, is hitting puberty and starting my growth spurts. See, my entire immediate family, and pretty much my entire extended family, with a few exceptions, are all like capped out at 5'9". So by being the first in my immediate family and one of the only members in my entire family to have my height start with the number 6 was actually really cool. Now, as an adult, I understand that as a 6-foot tall human, I'm not going to be able to weigh 130 pounds and remain healthy. But as a kid, I didn't know that. I just saw the weight going up on the scale and I was panicked and I beat myself up over it a lot. And ultimately, I bullied myself into an eating disorder. See, it actually started because I looked like this, and I had a Muslim friend who was partaking in Ramadan at the time. This just so happened to overlap with my best friend who was an O lineman for the high school football team. And he would invite us to the workouts that the jocks were doing because it was like an open invite sort of thing. So we would all hang out and work out together. I then got a membership at Planet Fitness, which was right across the street from the Walmart that I worked at. So after school and after the football workouts, I would go to work, and then after work, I would go directly across the street to the Planet Fitness, where I would then run 2 miles and do every single machine in the Planet Fitness. So between school, my job, the 2 separate workouts I was doing, and this new religious fasting I was introducing my body to, by the time I was 18 years old, I was 72 inches tall, and I weighed 145 pounds. And I was eating less than 800 calories a day. And at this point, I still, truly, genuinely thought that I was fat. The other thing is that my dad was married before he met my mom. And so because I had 2 older sisters that I didn't see often, anytime we did see them, we would always go out. McDonald's, Pizza Hut, Friendly's, all kinds of great places that I have really good connections and memories to. Also, it started raining. That's convenient. But when we weren't out with them and we weren't making memories at these various restaurants, I was at home and we didn't have a lot of money left over. And so oftentimes dinner was fish sticks and hot dogs and boxed mac and cheese. That's why now, as an adult, I eat out often, as much as I can and as much as I want, because I'm essentially treating myself to the things that I feel like maybe I didn't get. The point being is that eating healthy wasn't really an option growing up. I mean, the sheer concept of eating healthy has always been in the privileged category. Despite boomers trying to gaslight us into thinking that McDonald's is a luxury item, can we all remember the concept of the dollar menu, right? But the point is that this lack of money completely changed everything when my dad got fired. But rather than finding a new job, he decided to just make his own business in the field that he knew. Okay, this is the part where I admit that I read the assignment wrong. I thought that the assignment was due on July 14th, when it actually was due on June 14th. Which is very different times. This realization of my illiteracy caused me a huge change in plans, because originally, since I thought it was due on July 14th, I was going to go up on July 4th, because we're already going there for a vacation anyway to visit our parents for the first time this year. And so I was going to go up to my dad's store, and I was going to do the thing that I'm about to do right now. But because I don't feel like driving 12 hours in a 24-hour period, I decided instead I'll just drive 40 minutes. So of course it's like 89 degrees until I start driving, and then it decides to pour down raining. But regardless, so maybe a quarter mile away from where my dad worked, there was a Wawa, which, if you're unfamiliar, Wawa is basically a gas station. Now every Saturday I would go with my dad to his job. And this didn't start when he got his own business. This was like a tradition that me and him did since I was like 6 or 7. Get out! One day, he was like, "What do you want for lunch?" And I still looked like this at the time, so I didn't really care. And he suggested that I go to Wawa. And I remember that he gave me a $20 bill And he basically gave me his order and was like, anything that you want, you can get, as long as you get me what I want and you can afford it. It was the first time in my life that I had actually felt like an individual. You know, I got to choose what I wanted to eat, I got to look around, and I got to go by myself. I just walked to the Wawa. Personally, this to me was the first time that I felt like my dad really genuinely trusted me with something that seemed really big and important at the time, getting lunch. I know obviously now it doesn't really, that's not that big a deal, but back then when you're 13 and the biggest issue you have to worry about is the zit on your forehead, yeah, dad giving you a somewhat important job, it made me feel good, you know? Over the last 10 years, Wawa has become an entirely different location. What used to be simple kiosk of like club sandwiches and hoagies is now just a big smorgasbord of pizza and chicken and healthy energy smoothies and cheeseburgers and all day breakfast. And it takes forever for me to find that damn chocolate chip cookie because they got rid of the dessert section. But I also wanted to see something because, like I mentioned, my dad used to give me a $20 bill and I'd be able to get him a drink and sandwich, and then whatever money was left over I could utilize for myself. And this was such a common occurrence that I actually remember the order. My dad would get a turkey club and I would go and get him 2 Cokes because the Cokes were 2 for $3. They were 20 ounce or 16 ounce Cokes, the medium sized bottles. And then I would always get a large hoagie, and I'd either get a chicken parm hoagie or I'd get a meatball sub hoagie. And then with the hoagie, I would go and get myself 2 teas because the Wawa teas, which are, I want to say only 16 to 12 ounces, they're about this big, and they were always 2 for $3 as well. So one of them was 2 for $3, one of them was 2 for $4, whatever. And then I would get myself that, the teas, and I would get myself a cookie, a warmed up chocolate chip cookie. Now all of that would come together and be less than $20 because I'd always be able to give him back $1 to $2 back, and then, you know, some change which he would let me keep because they were coins. So I'm curious that if I go in right now with this $20 bill, if I get the exact same order, what is the total price? Before I go to eat any of it, like I said, I mean, just this alone, just 2 sandwiches and a cookie were $20. And again, I used to be able to get them for all of this and both of these and maybe something else. Get away, fly. And maybe something else. I could get all of this for less than $20 to have money left over to give to my dad. Like, hey, here's your change back. I can't even get all of this anymore without spending so much money. As a concept, that's crazy, right? But I also think that with the expansions and getting around and all that stuff, like, it makes sense, and it's unfortunate. Some other I also wanted to mention, right? So, out of pure curiosity, I got a pizza from Wawa, which, like, the concept of getting pizza from a gas station is crazy, but Wawa is a little bit of an exception. Still kind of crazy of a concept, getting a pizza from Wawa. Especially when I consider their big thing used to be sandwiches, something basic like this turkey club, which is lettuce, tomato, mayonnaise, turkey, bread. Not even crazy bread, just regular white bread. Now, not to say this is bad. It tastes fine. But it also kind of tastes kind of basic and plain. Now, as I opened up my sandwich, I did not get it, but I saw it. It was on their breakfast, their, all day, everyday breakfast menu. They had an option to get a French toast sandwich. Now, I personally used to love the French toast sandwich that Wawa had. I think it's kind of like a generic sort of one that you can get depending on the consumer or whatever, like, you know, whatever parent company has the option to get it. But they are so good. They're little tiny. It's 2 pieces of circular French toast, some cheese, some egg, and a sausage. And it is arguably, I think, the best breakfast sandwich I've ever had in my life. It is immaculate. And I tried to click on it just now because I was curious, and they don't even have an option for sausage anymore. You can get turkey, you can get ham, you can get bacon, but sausage wasn't even an option. And then I went up to the little kiosk because you used to, rather than getting it on the little square computer kiosk thing, you used to be able to walk up and into where kind of the cash register is. There used to be, you know, warming tray sort of things where you could get all sorts of things. You know, you could get pretzels, which I love, the stuffed cream cheese pretzel, which again would not be able to afford. They didn't have it this time, but if I could, wouldn't be able to afford it with that $20 bill anymore. I'd have to either choose between that or the cookie. And then, you know, they have sandwiches, some sort of chicken nuggets, jalapeno poppers, that sort of thing. And they didn't even have the French toast as an option on the menu, on the heating tray. So I just point that out because something like the sandwich that I got, right, which is an immaculate sandwich, at least the last time I had it, it was. Sprayed all over me. Look at that. All over my shirt. It'd be fine if it was on my arm. I didn't clean it off on my arm. It got all over my shirt. Are you kidding me? I don't have any napkins. All my napkins are in the car. Damn it. But when I think about the joy of this sandwich, and I think about the French toast sandwich, the reason why they were so good is because they were simple, right? Sandwich, bread, sausage, cheese, chicken, cheese, some sauce. It wasn't crazy. Even something like the sandwich my dad would have gotten, right? Yeah, it's got a lot more stuff on it, but all the items are basic. You got 2 tomatoes, you got some lettuce, bacon, to the turkey, obviously, some mayonnaise, some cheese, all wrapped in a bread. And it's simple. And I'm not saying that a pizza is a complex dish by any means, but when you begin your restaurant with all these simple things and you start expanding it to cheeseburgers and pizza, and this is one of the smaller pizzas too, by the way, it's still pretty big, it's personal pizza, but you know, cheeseburgers and french fries and pizza and all this stuff. You know, even the drink that she ended up getting, which is like a mango dragon fruit smoothie with yogurt, and you can like add caffeine and add an espresso shot and make it an energy drink, make it a protein drink, and it's like, at what point do you do too much? You know, that reminds me of another memory of mine, which is semi-related because my cousin Justin had shown up to my dad's shop, and when he showed up, we decided to go to Wawa for lunch that day, and so me and him walked, and it was great. And as we were walking, I remember this conversation very vividly because I like the idea of saying I told you so, but the TV in the back of my dad's shop that I would use to watch things on at the time had Netflix, Amazon, and YouTube because those were the streaming services. And I was explaining to my cousin that Disney, it's rumored at the time that Disney was considering their own streaming service and was actually planning to make, we didn't have the term streaming service at the time, but they were planning to make their own sort of Disney Netflix. And that's why Netflix was slowly starting to get rid of things from, you know, Nickelodeon and Paramount and Disney. Yes, I am old enough to remember a time in which you could watch Ben 10, Danny Phantom, and Pair of Kings all on one streaming platform. I'm also old enough to remember when Netflix used to ship you DVDs. When was the last time y'all heard of the Super Mario Bros. Super Show? I didn't think so. Anyways, but I remember telling him that if this is successful, then maybe the other companies would have some sort of inspiration to make their own services. You know, like a Disney only service would inspire a Cartoon Network only service, or maybe a Nickelodeon only service. Now, he told me that that wouldn't make any sense because, one, it would be way too expensive, and two, if they did do it, then they'd probably get to a point where, since everybody is all separated, that you'd have to pay all of these different prices, that they would end up creating bundles for you to just pay for what was essentially cable again, so you'd get all the services for one low price, and that would literally defeat the entire purpose of the streaming service as it existed. Anyways, here we are 10 years later. I'm going to go watch regular show on Disney Plus later. I get it with my Hulu subscription. Let's bring this up because time has changed so much. Everything's changed. We've changed. I've changed. I don't care that much about my weight anymore. I'm fatter than ever. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are still days where I look in the mirror and I want to puke. But I'm a lot more confident in myself now. That's why I'm not afraid to eat on camera. It's weird being at peace with yourself when you remember all the animosity you used to have. Animosity that you used to convince yourself that this one singular issue was the reasoning for all of your problems. And ultimately, you get rid of all of that one specific issue and you realize all your problems have remained. Problems still exist, they're still around, and you beating yourself up over it wasn't doing anything but depriving you of some delicious sweet treats. They burnt my cookie.